So with us is Pascal Perry, who is an economist, consultant, and the author most recently of a book in French on Google. And Mary Ekelund of France Digital, one of the co-founders of France Digital, and part of the movement that got the French government to stand down on increased capital gains taxes, a movement called Les Pigeons. And also with us, Nicholas Vineker of the Reuters news agency, who follows labor issues there. We asked you, by the way, on the France 24 Debate Facebook page, is François Hollande, when you look at all of this, a socialist? And I got to say, he's got bad numbers in the polls, and you have not been kind to the French president. Whatever he is ruining the country, says Keith. He has no clue on how to make France more competitive in today's global market. We asked, again, the question was, is he a socialist? Good question, says Darius. More importantly, I'm still trying to figure out if he is a president. Before the break, Steve Erlinger was wondering whether or not Hollande had the guts to go forward with what he's trying to do. Nicholas Vineker, he's certainly shown certain, how should we put this, image problems. If he's really trying to steer the economy in this logical manner that we've been tidily describing so far, that message has not been getting across.
Yeah, I think François Hollande is in a very difficult position. On the one hand, he is doing certain things. The labor reform is no doubt courageous. It's the first time a president has done something like this in decades, I think it's fair to say. There are other reforms in the pipeline. The problem is that François Hollande can't come up on a mountaintop and say, look at me, I'm making the French economy more liberal and more competitive. Because simple as that, the people who elected him don't share those ideas and don't think that France should necessarily loosen its labor laws or do a lot of things that Brussels would like it to do. So his image problem is partly not being able to advertise what he has done. And I think this is something
which politically is very tricky.
Very tricky because he needs to remain friends with the left, with his base, and at the same time have policies that are market friendly and that soothe some of the legitimate fears about the French deficit, the French economy, and French competitiveness.
And in the meantime, again, France is 12% unemployment, somewhere in the middle, by the way, the Eurozone average. Other countries not doing well either. But the country well behind the curve when it comes to having jobs for the young and for older workers. There you see the chart there. France below the Eurozone average. And in a nation where critics argue that a full-time contract makes you sometimes virtually unfireable, the government's recent youth jobs bill is welcomed by short-term hires, hoping for that holy grail, a full-time contract.
To have a contract is the ideal. There's no need to keep looking for a job and put you under even more pressure. I think too much. I hope I can earn a contract. I think about it every day and talk about it all the time.
He's hoping for that full-time contract. Mary Ekelund, people that you guys hire, what's the mentality these days?
The mentality? Well, something that I think is important is that in startups, you have 87% of full-time, long-term job contracts, which is a lot higher.
So you're atypical.
It's a lot higher than anywhere else in the economy. It's 76 on average. So we have to, because we're small companies, and if we want to hire good people, we need to hire them on full-time and long-term contracts. Something else, we hire young people. It's 32 in average, 32 years old, 41 years old in the key accounts in the CAC 40. So you really need to understand that in startups, it's a new model. We're hiring young people on long-term contracts, and we're having them have equity. With a very small range between the salary of the CEO and the salary of the employees. Average salary of the employee is 2.6 times less than the CEO, which is very small range. And they all have equity, almost. So it's a very different model. You're sharing the value creation.
Pascal Perry, is this the future of France?
I do hope so, but I want to answer to your question. You asked about the mentality. You know, there's a news magazine called L'Étudiant, The Student. was done a poll and asking to young people around 17 and 80, what would you like to do in the future? 70% answered that they would like to be civil servant. Means, you know, taking no risk. Why? Because I'm you know, a teacher. I'm teaching economy, so I know what's in the book. And in the book, most of the time, we try to explain to the youth in France that the market and the company are very dangerous places not to be in, you know, with cruel bosses that are going to try to make profits as possible, you know. So what could be done today?
And I'm sorry, is that the trend that
the trend is turning today? But for I would like to, I'd like to say that there is probably lost generation. We have to start from scratch today, and try to explain that globalization can also be a chance. We have a lot of young people coming up from business school, from engineering school that are going around the world, making good deals, having good jobs, and they have to come back today and try to convince that globalization is also a chance and not only a trap.
Nicholas Vinegar, is there a lost generation in France?
Well, I think if you look at youth unemployment figures, it's fair to say that a lot of people are going well into their 30s without having had a serious job for a long time. So in that sense, yes. I think just like you said, there is an expectation that I think people hear from their parents that you will have a long-term job contract and you will stay in one job. And so, in a sense, French youths expect the same things. We saw them demonstrate against pension reform, which seemed odd from abroad. These are 17, 18-year-old people demonstrating in the street about something that's not going to concern them for another 40 years. But again, it's these ideas about what to expect from life. Is there a risk factor in your workplace when you have a job contract? Is that something that is guaranteed for life? Well, in France, a lot of people say yes. I should have guarantees, and getting them to admit that, well, things are a bit more risky and uncertain than that is going to be a long process. Mm.
And is it a myth that people are unfireable in France?
It's expensive.
It's more expensive, but it's a myth. You can do it, no problem.
You can do it if you're willing to pay them sometimes 4 or 5 multiples of their yearly salary in cash. And that's very difficult for companies. There's a lot of talk about education reform, and I think that's very important. I mean, one of the things that strikes me as someone who's been here for a few years but came as a foreigner are the number of students who pass their bac, who are then
French high school diploma,
right? Who are then entitled to a place at a university, and a huge proportion of them don't make it through the first year.
All right.
And then, in a way, their lives are already spoiled because it's late for them to go into another kind of education, and they float around without the right kind of degree, and they're not trained in any apprenticeship way. And I think this is part of the problem. And there's also an ideology, which is really a cultural thing here, which is, to go to a technical school, to have an apprentissage, an apprenticeship, somehow means you're stupid. It's a lower class thing to do. And that's not true in Germany. I mean, it's considered something very valuable. And so partly it's a change of mindset. It's not about politics. It's about people's image of themselves, particularly in a country that values a certain kind of elitist education so very highly. I mean, the people who go to the Grandes Écoles, many of them, the children of school teachers, are set for life. It's true. But for the rest, it's a harder struggle in France than in many other places.
A harder struggle. The current government, Pascal Péry, has been touting the German model, has been touting apprenticeships, has been touting this concept of what they call, again, flexi-security, where you give an incentive to the boss to perhaps issue temporary layoffs until things get better so they can keep their staff. Is that going to work? Are the French going to be able to do that?
Well, I hope so. The President, François Hollande, will have a good opportunity in 2016, I think, to change the Convention 158 of the International Work Organization that say we have signed this convention, and it say that a contract cannot be ended without any justification. And that second point, a court is required to fix up the payment to the worker. We need more flexibility. Have you ever seen the labor code? It's looking like the Shakespeare, experience in France. And have you seen the
Not as well written.
the same one in Switzerland? It's a small leaflet. We need more simplification. Flexibility does not mean more in
That's
an
all
employment. Yeah. Sorry.
It's all codes.
Yeah. We need more simplification. That's right. I'm thinking to these small business companies we talked before. 3 million of small companies under 9%. Do you think that they have time to answer to the tax administration, to fulfill all the application forms? We need simplicity. Simplicity means efficiency, and this has to be changed.
Simplicity means change. Again, it harks back to the question. It's a bit strange, Marie-Ekelin, that suddenly everybody's saying how great Germany is, which in France hasn't always been the case in the past on the business front.
Well, you look at the Nordics, you look wherever things are better than where you sit from and when you sit. So it's a question of fashion, So I would say before that you were always looking at the U.S. model, which is basically what started up the whole startup industry. But I'd like to come back to one thing, which is the cultural aspect of it. And for the young generation, something that was not, for example, well understood by someone like Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who was saying you're putting greed inside schools by teaching entrepreneurship. He was saying something like that. I'm saying, no, what you're telling people is you need to take your own destiny in hands. Be inventive. You need to build a new economy. You have several choices. Your choice is not only to be an employee. You can also build a company. You can also build value, And it's not about just gaining money. It's about trying to be part of your society as someone who's changing the world as well.
Sorry, so both Pascal Perry and Marie-Ekelin talking about the risk aversion, which is so huge in this country. Is that changing in any way when you go about your reporting, Nicolas? Have you witnessed a difference in that respect?
Well, of course, nothing is black and white. I know some entrepreneurs who are more dynamic and more hungrier for risk than many people I know in the United States. But for a large part, the best and the brightest still want to go the public servant route and have those guarantees, the prestige that comes with it, the bank loans, a whole package of certainties that come with those choices. Where I have seen a very different attitude is in the French banlieue. We hear stories about
working class suburbs.
Working class suburbs. There you have a lot of people who say, well, we reject the system as a whole. They don't want us. We send our CVs to employers all the time, and based on the sound of our last name, we don't get called in for an interview. So what we're going to do is start our own company here. And in Aulnay-sous-Bois, for example, where that factory is closing down, I met a couple of entrepreneurs who'd started a taxi company. 20-year-old kids, perfectly well-spoken, and said they were accepted nowhere in the traditional French job market. And those people are very hungry and very interested in taking risks, and they travel abroad. They go to the Middle East, to Dubai, to places like that to find jobs. And I think the French leaders would do well to pay attention to those people and understand the value that resides there.
Steve Erlinger, you were saying you've been in this country for a lot of years. Again, are we seeing, is France of today different from the France of 5-6 years ago?
I think it is changing. It has to change. First of all, it's a more cosmopolitan place. It's more open to foreigners. There are more young people who speak other languages, not just English. Not many speak German, I have to say, but people are learning Chinese. If you believe the number of French nationals who are working in London, it's about 5% of the population. So there are people who want to work and who are going to more flexible working conditions to do that, particularly in terms of finance. I've lived in Germany too, and Germany is by no means perfect. And Germany 10 years ago was the sick man of Europe, and it is now slowing down. But what the Germans did, and it was a social democratic government that did it, was to get rid of a minimum wage, to cut the length of time people could be on welfare, to push people to go look for a job or to lose their benefits. These so-called Hartz reforms have done a great
painful
deal.
reforms, and the Social Democrats have been out of office ever since.
Well, this is what Hollande knows, and he also looked at Mario Monti, the former Italian prime minister who did a lot of the right things and got punished at the polls. And so I don't blame Hollande. Hollande is, first of all, a politician. He's responsible to his voters. He doesn't want to commit suicide. But I think, you know, the risk is that he finds reasons to do not enough, which is a sort of common human disease, but also a French disease, and in the end not make the dramatic changes that I think need to be made.
All right. Hollande's leadership skills we'll be talking about in the days to come, especially because we're coming up to the first anniversary of his election to power. Steve Erlanger, I want to thank you. I want to thank Mary Ekelund, Pascal Perry, and Nicholas Winokur. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.